Good evening, everyone. For the record, we're convening the July 6, 2023 City Council meeting at 6:30 p.m. Council, when I call your name, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Stroop.
Here.
Councilmember Roden.
Here.
Councilmember Bliss.
Here.
Councilmember Kerner.
Here.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
And Councilmember Menchow.
Present.
With 7 council members present, a quorum of the City Council is declared.
Thank you, Madam.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank everybody for attending the meeting today. A reminder to all those that are here, we are live broadcasting tonight's meeting. If you get the opportunity to speak as part of the meeting, I ask that you use the microphone up here so that those that are joining us on the live broadcast will hear the comments. When you do get the opportunity, please introduce yourself, what staff section you're from, whether or not you're a Carroll Street. That will move on to citizens to be heard.
Not that long ago.
To all of you a week or so ago on the Civic Center, and this was written before the agenda documentation was published. However, I think most of my points are still valid from my standpoint. Greg was good enough to meet with me Monday to discuss this, and we had a good chat for a long time. I personally believe the city facility for the City Council is mandatory, as this police area here is really unsatisfactory for enough residents or staff to attend meetings. And in the future, of course, the city is already 10-something thousand people growing, which then means the potential for people coming to the council meetings is even more for the numbers of people. One of my main issues is calling it a civic center versus what it will really primarily be used for, namely the city council. So I'll just go ahead and read this email for the record that I had sent. Council, as a former city council member, I feel I must comment about the Civic Center discussions. The 625 Bernie Star article brings out a critical point in Mr. Holcher's, not sure about the pronunciation of his name, comment about having, quote, public meetings and forums, unquote, to, quote, provide feedback on what they would like to see in the new public meeting and to determine the purpose, unquote. And I attached a copy. To me, this should have been done several years ago before spending any money. Without this, how can a design now be done? Assuming we need a 3,000 to 5,000 square foot facility before determining the need and use, to me is unforgivable. All the people I know have questioned the Civic Center concept. A public facility requires maintenance and daily, weekly upkeep. Who provides and pays for this? Years ago, we thought the police building could be a reasonable area for additional city hall facility. The renovation of it for a smaller area probably would cost less than demolition in a large building. Greg told me that the cost now for demolition, actually for the remediation, would be higher due to the lead and the asbestos. Even though a lot of money has already been spent on this, it wouldn't be too late to step back and have the public meetings and forums now to determine if a need exists and estimated ongoing costs. I think a driving force behind the Civic Center concept was the use of MDD funds. The building was originally, I believe, that we had called a City Hall Annex for the council. But when the MDD funds came into play several years ago, a use for the public had to be emphasized, thus the name Civic Center. So my question is, would the MDD then also pay a major portion of the annual upkeep costs of it? A smaller facility could use 100% city funds and forget about the MDD. Or possibly MDD could still legally use some of their funds if the new City Hall area would allow some scheduling of public use. Spending another $300,000 now before a need and purpose are understood and agreed to is not a sound business planning or looking out for the best interests of our residents and the tax dollars. I recommend Lopez Salas, the consultant or the architect, be told the use determination must be done now before they proceed, and please read this into the record. A couple other comments are the agenda documentation and resolution, which was extensive. There are a lot of pages there. And best I could determine, unless I missed it, they do not say anything about the city council using the Civic Center. The papers only mention city staff and public and private use. The council will use a very large percentage of the space and the daily, weekly, monthly, however you want to call it, usage of this building. The documentation doesn't mention a parking area either. However, it says there will be an outdoor eating area. So point is, who will schedule the public use of this building? Is this more staff work? Who pays for the maintenance and the cleaning? Could MDD share in this? It seems like, to me, legally they could, since they're part of the original funding of this, that they could share in the upkeep, since it is a percentage of it being used for their purpose of community support. Another point, will special insurance be needed to cover the public use? This isn't a government facility per se that's going in, but it's a joint use, mixed use facility, but now with the public involved and potential injuries, who knows what could happen, there could be all kinds of strange things that go on. So in any case, at what cost would additional insurance be? Another question is, will the public be charged a fee for the use of this building? Organizations, public, individuals, whatever it may be, to help offset the costs. The documentation from some of the MDD at some point indicated revenues, but the revenues aren't clear as to where at all MDD thinks revenues will come from. Lastly, I believe the name should be changed to reflect its use. For example, City Council and Community Center, and actually call it what it really is. The council, I believe, is going to use it tremendously, and it's needed, but even with the sharing of MDD, it seems to me that legally it could be looked at to determine the definitions of what monies MDD can use legally on this, and hopefully, to me, for easy action now, take a hindsight look at this and make a clear assessment as to what the need and purpose is, the number of square footage that it really need. 3,000 to 5,000 to me seems like a big spread. The architects, are they going to design 3 plans, one at 3,000, one at 4,000, one at 5,000? So to me, there are a lot of questions still that should be asked. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments and thank you for being here.
Can I answer one thing?
Sure.
By matter of fact, so the MDD's policy is not to have ownership past the original construction of the project. So there would be no intention to have the MDD help maintain or in any way be involved with the project after it's launched. That's within our policy.
Is that called ownership?
What'd you say? Can you speak that on the microphone, please?
You mentioned ownership, but is that ownership or sharing? They contribute, pick a number, half the money, a third of the money. Is that ownership or contribution participation? And
It's
so
not,
that later, in order to protect their quote investment, would sharing in the upkeep costs or insurance costs or whatever, because otherwise the city is going to have to pick up that 100%.
It's neither. It's neither ownership or investment. It's reimbursement. It's a grant reimbursement.
Okay? Any other points, questions? No?
Yeah, I can answer questions.
Mr. Schmidt was the only one that, can't hear me? How about now? Mr. Schmidt was the only one that signed up to speak as part of Citizens to be Heard. Is there anybody else here tonight that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? And with that, then we'll move on to our consent agenda for tonight. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. First is the approval of the June 15, 2023 regular city council meeting minutes. And second is approval of the June 23, 2023 special city council meeting minutes. Is there any council member that would like to remove either of these items from consent to consideration? And with that, then, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
From Chesley, and a second.
Second.
From Emily. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Thank you. We'll move on to our consideration items tonight. First up is the consideration and the possible action approving the first reading of an ordinance amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, Chapter 1, General Provisions, but this is Article 1.07, Trees and Shrubs, to include updated definitions and to add new sections defining the authority and responsibility of public trees. I'll hand this over to Kelsey.
Good evening, Council. My name is Kelsey. I'm the Environmental Program Manager for the City of Fair Oaks Ranch. And so this item was originally presented back in April 20th, to get for council's consideration. Based on feedback we received during that meeting, we've brought it back with changes for y'all to consider. A few of the changes will first be that we have replaced the word parkway with unimproved shoulder to avoid any confusion with parkway as in Fair Oaks Parkway. We have added unimproved shoulder exhibits to provide examples of that are found typically throughout the city. And we have also clarified that the city will be responsible for the maintenance of public trees, including those located in unimproved shoulder areas. The city's Public Works Department currently maintains most of the trees within the city's rights-of-ways, parkways, public properties, to ensure there are no obstructions to driver sight distance, pedestrian walkways, or other potential hazards. The city will be responsible for maintaining trees on public properties such as unimproved shoulders to the level in which safety has been achieved. With the adoption of this ordinance, HOAs and adjacent property owners may continue to maintain trees in the vicinity of their subdivisions and their properties. This includes unimproved shoulder areas and islands. There will be no new enforcement mechanisms that will be implemented as a result of the passing of this ordinance. Public Works Department will continue to notify or request HOAs and property owners to maintain trees on their private property if it becomes a safety hazard prior to Public Works going through and maintaining them for ourselves. Are there any, lastly, by amending this ordinance to include the authority and responsibility of public trees on public properties, the city will be one step closer in obtaining Tree City USA recognition. Does anyone have any questions regarding the ordinance in front of you?
Go ahead.
Might be actually a Dan question. I'm looking at the adjacent property owner section A, and it's talking about the adjacent property owner, when acting within this provision, may perform reasonable and routine maintenance. So I guess my question is, if I go into the unimproved shoulder and decide I want to just remove a tree, it's technically the city's property, how do we define I guess, routine maintenance, and how do we enforce that, if that makes sense?
She might want to address it. I think that's under the prohibition against harming public trees.
Correct. So under prohibition of harming public trees, part of that is it is unlawful for any person, firm, or corporation to damage, remove, or cause the damage or removal of trees on public properties without written permission from the city.
Is that okay? All right. Anybody else?
I have just a point of clarification, I guess. So I'm reading the definition of unimproved shoulder and then looking at your picture examples. The one where the top example where you have the sidewalk over there, the first sentence reads, and I just now caught this when I reread it in here, the area along the street between the curb and the sidewalk. So the curb and the sidewalk are connected, so there really is no in between. So you mean the green area? That's your right?
So there are areas where the curb is offset from the pavement and there is a green space between the curb and a sidewalk.
Okay.
And so that's what that means. And then if there is no curb or sidewalk, the unpaved portion between the unpaved portion of the area between the street right-of-way line and the paved portion of the street or alley. And so in the first example, it would be from the property line to, including the sidewalk, to the edge of pavement.
Okay, just confused me when I reread that because I'm like, you're talking about a line. If you're thinking about that example, I mean,
Any other questions?
Are you okay with it, or?
yeah, I mean, yeah, sure.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, I mean, to
Go ahead.
Michelle's point, do we need to clarify that? Because that one does not have a space between the sidewalk and the street. So do we need to
I mean,
add-
it's kind of splitting hairs, don't
It
get
is
me wrong,
splitting
but
hairs, but it is.
I
it
just,
is-
when I reread that, I'm like, and then I look at the picture, I'm kind of like, well, there is no space between there, so I guess maybe just put in another example. Maybe that covers it. So you cover all four of your bases.
Or maybe as an alternative, put in the event there is a sidewalk that is up against a curb, it's the unimproved portion, beyond the sidewalk to the property line. And that way it's ultimately clear.
Or curb/sidewalk.
Right.
Curb/sidewalk. Anyway, I'm splitting hairs, I really am. I don't mean to go down a rabbit hole.
That means you read it.
I did read it.
I think the definition's clear. I think it's just the picture example makes it a little confusing, but I think the wording is I think it's pretty clear by wording. But it's only when you compare it to that example that it looks kind of
Okay.
confusing.
Based off of that example?
I don't think it needs to be amended for that. I don't think it was the intention to have a picture of every example of every type of unimproved shoulder. I think you were trying to address the ones that are the most commonly confusing.
Correct. It was, the intention of doing 3 examples was to do the most common and not to get muddled down by having every type of example. But if there's any edits or revisions that no one would like to see before the second reading, no?
My thoughts are there's so many possibilities across the city because we're not uniform in anything we do along the right-of-ways and the unimproved shoulders. It really, what this was from the previous
Discussion.
ordinance, discussion we had, it was a change from parkway to unimproved shoulders is what we made.
Correct, yeah.
And the parkway was confusing. I think
Yep.
unimproved shoulder now provides the
Clarity.
information and makes it clearer. I'm okay with the definition.
Okay.
Anybody else has really any challenges with it, we can address it. if we
It's
need
not
to.
that big of a deal. Was just something I noticed.
Okay. With that then, could I get a motion to approve an ordinance amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, Chapter 1, General Provisions, Article 1.07, Trees and Shrubs, to include updated definitions and to add new sections defining the authority and responsibility of public trees.
So moved.
Second.
For Michelle and Scott. Sorry, Emily.
Okay. Trees.
Any other discussion from council?
Good job.
Right, thank you.
And hold on a second. And I apologize. Previously, I didn't open it up for any questions from anybody else here tonight, if they had any questions on the ordinance. Okay, and with a motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion is approved.
All right, thank you.
Now, thank you, Kelsey. Second consideration item that we have tonight is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution authorizing the execution of amendment to the Chapter 377 Project Funding Agreement between the Fair Oaks Ranch Municipal Development District and the City of Fair Oaks Ranch for the development of a civic center and execution of all applicable documents by the city manager. And Scott, you gonna lead us through this one?
I will take this one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was placed on the agenda per request in of the upcoming MDD meeting. The resolution as proposed would provide an amendment to the existing grant agreement as read between the city and MDD. And if approved by the council tonight, this amendment will be submitted to MDD at its for consideration at its meeting, which is next week, next Wednesday. So I'm sure as you all recall, the existing grant agreement expires this September, and the amendment as proposed changes a few items in the agreement. First, most importantly, it extends the agreement by 3 years. We can go through the revised Civic Center process, which council kicked off at the last meeting with the approval of the design consultant agreement. So it extended by 3 years. It would allow for some flexibility in square footage between 3,000 and 5,000 square feet. The current agreement says 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. And it increases the proposed grant award from $600,000 to $1.2 million. None of this presumes that we have a preconceived notion of the size, cost, or the use of the facility. The intent of the process and our agreement with the consultant engineer is that will be determined through a public process with the council and facilitated, buildable and affordable within the confines of what the council and ultimately the public would like to see. The agreement still calls for the city to fund the project upfront with a reimbursement from the MDD upon completion, and the rest of the terms of the agreement would remain in effect as it stands currently. Just for your reference, the MDD is projected to have a fund balance of about $3.2 million by the end of next fiscal year, 2023-24, all else being equal, of course. And so long as interest rates and sales tax remains relatively high, annual collections are expected to be $400,000 to $500,000 annually through the MDD. So everything else remains in effect, but this is all proposed in preparation for making a formal request to the MDD to extend that agreement and get this process rolling. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll take any questions.
I had a question related to that. So this is a formal request to the MDD to modify the project funding agreement that is currently in place?
Yes, sir.
Is that, and so is there any action, is this the only action that we'll have to take as part of council, or does it have to come back after MDD reviews it?
As designed or amended, if you will, the idea would be that the city council would be approving the revised agreement here. If MDD does the same, the city manager through council action and the board president of MDD could execute the documents, the amendment, and proceed down that path. So if it's passed as is, those would be the only two actions required.
Okay.
However, if the MDD meets on Wednesday and determines maybe there's a portion of what's being requested that they're not willing, you would have to come back
That's correct.
for review and approval.
Okay.
But I do want to just kind of clarify, just add a little bit. So as a member of the MDD and as the MDD president, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about the timing and why this is coming now. Is the grant that is currently approved to the council expires in September. With the grant that's currently approved, that means we set aside the money that we have allocated for it to an allocated fund, so it's not available for us to use on other grants. If this does not get extended before we pass our budget, which would be in July, that means we would most likely not allocate that money for next year until something is approved. And then at that point, we would have to make a budget amendment. And I believe we bring our budget to city council. So July is the meeting where we approve the budget. So that's why we wanted to have this go alongside of it, so we can understand what upcoming grants would we expect to have for next year's budget. We need to have it done at the July meeting because we have to then bring it back to the city council for approval before it gets executed for the beginning of the fiscal year. So this is why the timing of all this is. Again, but this does not designate that city council has to build a very particular thing other than outside of what you've put in here for the grant. And if at any time during the course of this grant, the city council decides not to build it, that's fine. You just cancel the grant, you just don't execute the grant. It's a reimbursement grant, so you get paid back after you've built it. So this is just securing funds if the council wants to use it.
I have a couple of questions, and these might be maybe for staff and for Laura. Why did we update from 3,000 to 4,000, from 3,000 to 5,000 square feet?
That's not for me.
Sure. And again, that was purely for flexibility purposes. There was no specific, we don't necessarily intend to expand the size of it, but at this point we just don't know, so we just wanted the latitude there. That's the sole reason.
Okay. And then the questions I have, and some of the questions I have, I'm not sure if it's appropriate for this agenda item, so someone just stop me if I go off track and I'm not supposed to talk about it. But these uses, Laura, that you refer to are like this general stuff right here, correct? That's talks about the use of it, costs associated with the construction of a civic center. Because again, I going off of what Mr. Schmidt said earlier, the thought keeps crossing my mind that we're putting lipstick on a pig, so to speak, and that we're really going to be using it for city hall chambers. Can be considered public? And if we take this money and we don't build that, and it ends up being a city hall chambers with some conference rooms or whatever it ends up, like.
So, and maybe Dan can help me with the answer on this one. It doesn't have to be called a civic center.
Okay.
That this MDD does not require that. That was just what the city proposed in their grant to the MDD. I'm talking now as the MDD person. So it doesn't matter what it's called. The value is it has to have enduring value for the entire community. That's what the purpose of what we could use the MDD for. Now, it doesn't mean it could only be used for that.
Right.
The city council, we meet twice a month. The
Well, then
rest
we
of the
have
time, it's not available.
Planning and zoning, MDD.
All at night, most of it
All-
is not during the day. So it is available for other uses. And that's why they came to the city, to the MDD, was proposing that this building would be used for city council and for other meetings, but would also be available for the community. It doesn't state what it has to be available for. The MDD is not stating what it needs to be used for. We're just saying as long as it is bringing enduring value to the city. The stipulations that were written in here were not written by the MDD. It was written by the city. So we can choose to change this, but then we just have to make sure that whatever we change in here still meets the requirements of what an MDD can fund.
So voting, to me, bringing everybody in, if we can use it to vote, is already bringing the entire city in for an enduring value for the community. I mean, we get asked that all the time. So I'm just saying, I think,
Well, if you don't make it available to the community, then it's probably not enduring. Like what I'm saying is if it's closed whenever council isn't using it, that might cause a problem for enduring value for the community. Like if it's locked and your place is only used for these meetings. Like it doesn't need to have a kitchen. It doesn't need to have an outdoor seating area to meet the MDD requirements. That just happened to be what the city put in their grant request. If we want to take that out, it still
what
will
I'm
meet the
saying.
requirements of an MDD grant, as long as it's bringing enduring value to the community. And Dan, correct me if there's better description of what that means.
So no, I think you've done a good job. I mean, specifically, the definition in the statute says a convention center facility or related improvements, and then it says such as. And I think that's where civic center comes in, because it's such as a convention center, civic center building, civic center hotel or auditorium, and then it includes parking areas and other facilities. But, you know, the basic definition for an MDD is anything that a type B EDC can do, which is all in chapter 505, right? And so it doesn't repeat all those, but it says that, and then it says and it specifically delineates civic centers or things such as civic centers.
Is that how we came up with the name, how we keep getting stuck on that name?
On civic center, I mean, I don't know if we're stuck on it, but that's where that probably came from, is that the statute specifically uses civic center. But it just uses it as for illustrative purposes. I mean, it says such as, so you can.
Little c, not big C, right? It
Right,
doesn't
you
have to be
could-
the
that's right.
name of it. It's a civic center, little c.
Gotcha.
So we could call it
A
City
community
Council
center.
and Community Center.
That's right. You can call it whatever you want.
Chesley, did we answer the question that you had? Okay.
I think to Laura's point, it's just simply it's the use that's more important than the
Yeah.
name. You
That
know?
was my point.
So if we go forward with the documents that we have here before us tonight, Civic Center is all throughout this. If we want the option to change this to a community center, are we tied to it by approving this document tonight, tied to Civic Center?
You're not tied to that. I think the purpose of using something like that is something that is commonly known in the design and everything. So whatever you want to ultimately call it, though, I think the design is intended to be what you would commonly find within a civic center. It's large gathering spaces that have multiple uses and flexibility in how they're configured. I mean, but all that's going to be part of whatever the design is. So I don't, whether you change that wording tonight or not, I don't think is going to be the ultimate outcome of what the use of the facility is, as long as it is in line with those types of facilities that were listed there. So.
Because when I look at it, when we talk about the things that we're going to utilize it for, with city council, with community events, excuse me, and all the options that are available to it, I think the term civic center tends to become misleading in what we think a civic center is for. And, you know, you relate it to probably a civic center in downtown San Antonio compared to what we were here, and they're not comparable. And so when I look at it, it's more a community center, but honestly, that could also be misleading in what that would entail. But it is something that is available for the community. And so I guess my real question then goes back to, if we don't modify the term civic center in this document and we approve it tonight, are we tied to the word civic center moving forward? No.
Is not,
They
does
don't
not,
care.
we don't declare those things. We
Okay.
won't be the owner of it. We don't name it. We just fund something that's bringing value to the community.
As long as
If you rename it 5 times, I don't,
okay.
right? If you call it the Boot Gobbets Community whatever, gathering place, I mean, it doesn't matter.
That's good.
But if we don't feel comfortable
down,
with some
show
of the
down.
stipulations that are put in here, might be best to remove the things that we're not 100% sure on. Like if we don't all agree we're going to have an outdoor seating area, and if we don't all agree there's going to be a kitchen area, the MDD isn't approving those specific items. This was just ideas. It might be, you could remove it from here and then still do it. You know, it doesn't, I wouldn't put things in here that we're not 100% sure of. Just the high-level things, that it's going to be available for the community programs, like right here, the center will maximize space for community programs, private, public meetings, city staff. I would say the MDD is going to focus more on that paragraph than all the bullets. I don't even know if it needs to have a size in there, to be honest.
That was going to be my question.
Perfectly fine with not having a specified sign or the other bullets that Councilmember Kerner mentioned.
Essentially, what you're doing here is we're setting aside, if you were to submit this to the MDD, we're setting aside $1.2 million of our budget to be made available for the city for the purposes of a center that provides space for the community, can do other things, and how the city wants to build it, as long as it does that value, the money is set aside for it. We're not in there approving what it looks like. We're not in there approving any of the details. We're approving the concept. We may have some questions about the concept, like questions of, is it going to be available a lot for the community, or is it just going to be very specific things? Because that might help us determine if it has enduring value.
Do we need to answer that tonight?
No.
I've got a question on that. Dan, what defines, what's the threshold for defining if it's available to the community? I mean, is there any kind of guidance that we have to say it'll be available X amount of time, or what's the rules around that?
There's not, as far as in any particular statute.
Okay.
I mean, I do think that as it was discussed the first time it came through for approval, that all met, I mean, the common sense thresholds is what available to the public. It was talked about being available for HOAs to host meetings and things such as that. But there were also multiple spaces. Like, it wasn't the whole building that you had to have. There were other spaces that were available. I mean, I think that's my understanding was that was the whole idea. Just like you would, the mayor referenced community centers, and so many of the cities we work in have some type of multi-purpose facility. Sometimes they're located in parks. The city of San Antonio has buildings within their parks that there's a fee schedule, there's a way to reserve space at that facility. And I think that was what was anticipated, is that this would simply be a gathering place available for the public to be able to rent. And somebody mentioned that, and somebody asked, is this going to be charged? Typically, yeah, there's a fee for the use of the facility. The Schertz Civic Center, if anybody who came to Hogwild last year, that's called a civic center, and it's probably more of a traditional civic center type thing, but yeah, it's leased up all year. The public just hosts events there, but the city also hosts events there.
And just to clarify, those details don't need to be in the MDD grant proposal. We don't need to figure that out tonight. We just have to say, yes, it's going to be available to the community, and then the city can decide that at the time that we want to do that. The MDD is just setting aside funding for something we feel would bring value to the community. And you have to have enough information for us to understand what the city wants to do with the money.
Leslie.
So I'm thinking, if possible, I like the paragraphs about the HOA and renting it in the top paragraph. So if we can just remove the, in the description of the facility, the square footage, and then I would take out bullet 2, and then the last 2 bullets tying us to specifically a kitchen and outdoor seating. If we don't have to have that in there and we can still do it later, we may or may not once we get community input. So if we could take those out.
Can we take out all the bullets? Like that entire lesson, the Civic Center will feature the following. Can we just take all that out?
Well, I
bullets
kind
are
of
you talking
like,
about?
I like it
For,
for community gathering
Part
space
page
for
2
residents.
of the
And I
amendment.
like tying it to that we want to strengthen and celebrate the Hill Country aesthetic, because I think those are important to our community.
Oh,
So that's why I was leaving that type of stuff in there, but taking out the bullets that direct us to a specific type of building construction, if you will. So that's my recommendation, take out bullet 2 and the bottom 2.
And the
I'm okay.
references to the square footage?
Well, that's
Because
what
there's a few different areas where that's referenced.
Yeah, and the references to the square footage throughout.
Hey, Laura, from an MDD standpoint, there's no sharing of, specific requirement that we have to match this amount of money to build this. It's just if we build it for $1.5 million, then MDD, if they approve the $1.2 million, they would pay that on completion? Or do we have a certain amount we have to contribute to this?
It's a great question. So the answer is no. Basically, when you put together a grant, that's how much the MDD would be willing to reimburse you. You could spend more, you could spend less, but that would be up to the amount that we would reimburse. Currently, the grant is for $600,000. I think it's pretty well anticipated it'll be much more than $600,000. So that's why I think they went and said 1.2. That doesn't mean that's the estimate. That's just how much the city is asking the MDD to set aside for reimbursement. If during the course of this, it costs more than that and you want to go back to the MDD for more, we could do another amendment, but the MDD has to take a look at our budget, how much money we have, and if we're willing to take that much out of our budget. Because that's money that we don't have for other projects that might come in. So it's really kind of up to how much the MDD feels comfortable taking out of our budget for this one project.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to ask what other projects MDD has in the air right now, or?
Sure. So we're talking about MDD grant. There are currently no other projects that are on the list. There were some ideas that were proposed, potentially city entrance signs could be something that falls into a requirement that, a use that the MDD could use money for. But as of now, there is no projects or proposals that we have heard of that are coming from any other entity.
Real quick, Scott, on page 6 in the MDD obligation, we still are showing grant payment to be $600,000 in 1 and 3.
Can you
Which
reference
page?
the page number?
Yes,
The
it's
overall
page 6, but the
5.
overall page 30.
30. All right.
And on
Page
page
thir-
25,
Oh, you're
too,
on
but-
the, okay. Exhibits.
Yeah, so it's still referencing
I
600,000.
believe that's the existing agreement. That
Okay.
is for your reference.
Okay,
Oh, it's there
cool.
for our reference, okay.
That's a
Yeah.
reference, got it.
So yeah, Exhibit B is the current agreement.
Which starts on page 25.
Yes.
Exhibit B is the current agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because that has the
Okay.
square footage in it as well.
Yeah.
And it's,
So I think
But we're not changing the current agreement.
we're,
That's already
No.
in effect.
okay, let me back up. So Exhibit B on page 25 is the current agreement in place,
Yes.
correct? Okay,
Yes.
sorry, I thought you said like 2 or 3 pages back, but I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, I got you.
so now that we're talking about this, I'm looking at page 20 of our packet, which is page 1 of Exhibit A1. I think we need to get rid of the 5th whereas statement. So if we're not going to be putting any square footage in, we probably should get rid of that 5th whereas statement.
Update the next one.
Well, the update, the next one is a statement of fact. It's the one after it says that we're going to
Oh, yeah,
update
okay,
it.
Yep.
And then also part 1 of Article 3. Facility means the planned Fair Oaks Ranch Civic Center. I don't want to change that 1,000 places, but that will, add and then get rid of approximately 3,000 square feet of, and it'll say that will add flexible and highly functional meeting and event space. We just get rid of the square feet in there.
Approximately.
And then part 2, the same deal.
Remove the bullets as well.
The part 2, first sentence, located in the heart of the city of Fair Oaks Ranch, Civic Center will add, then get rid of approximately 3,000 square feet, will add flexible and highly functional meeting and event space.
That just
Hey.
will be a flexible and highly functional meeting and event space.
Yeah, that's fine, you can do it that way too.
Laura,
Is that,
back on that Part 1, Article 3, 1, 2, 3, 3 sentences down. we want to take out the reference for kitchen?
Oh, I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
We're,
I thought you already passed that.
I'm on
sorry.
part 2.
Right above it.
One, there's a reference to a kitchen.
Part 1, Article 3 is what I'm
Oh.
talking about.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Conference room and kitchens for the express purpose of creating,
Oh, yeah, we can get rid of that, that's fine, unless if everyone agrees.
because it still doesn't mean we don't have to add it. We can add it later,
Of course.
right?
Scott, what's the best way to handle all these changes as we're going through this?
Well, you have a couple options. Since this is dealing with the contract, and I'm sure Dan will chime in too, but the actual resolution authorizes the city manager to execute the document. So I'm perfectly comfortable taking this direction to remove the 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, the bullets as mentioned, and proceed that way. If
Okay.
you want to make that into a formal motion, you may do so, but you don't have to, and we can make those changes.
But that means some of these other smaller edits that we shouldn't probably make now, doesn't make us tied to them? Like the one that I just mentioned, for instance?
Kitchen,
Yeah.
I got that one, if you're good with that.
If we tell him to pull out the bullets and he's going to go through the entire thing and pull out kitchen and square footage information in
gotcha.
it.
Yep.
But we don't have to sit here and wordsmith the document. He's capable of doing that.
I think we should reference that he's going to make the changes that we have discussed, just generally speaking,
so-
in the motion.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if we approve the motion with changes of removal of any reference to 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, inclusion of a kitchen or any outdoor seating or eating area, would that meet the requirements of what we need?
I believe so.
I agree, and if we look at the motion, we're actually not approving the amendment, we're approving the resolution. So we're just approving the words on page 18 and 19.
Right.
And there's nothing on 18 and 19 I disagree with, and as long as the city manager understands our intent,
Thanks for that, Laura.
okay. Can we get rid of the word Exhibit A? Okay. Since,
Laura, is that what you were just talking about? I mean, I know Exhibit A is on the top, but in Section 2 where it says Exhibit A1, should we,
Yes.
is that what you were talking
yes,
about? Okay.
yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Well, we're approving a resolution where we authorize the city manager to sign a project funding agreement, which is included as part of Exhibit A.
And I said remove the word Exhibit A, just to execute an amendment with the MDD. Unless we don't feel comfortable with that, and we want to say exactly what we want amended, and then we would have to go through Exhibit A1 and change the words.
I'm personally comfortable taking out A and letting Scott move forward.
Will that work, Dan? If we just remove Exhibit A as a reference? Okay, and Scott, you're okay with that? Okay. All right, any other questions or, go ahead.
I do have one question. So, since I'm good with the resolution and going forward, but since we're not wordsmithing every word here anymore, should we now direct not to use the word Civic Center? I mean, do we want to call it something different at this point?
I don't know what the answer to that would be at the moment. So I personally need some more time to think on that one. I agree with you, though. I don't like the word Civic Center because I think of something more grandiose, like,
Like a convention center?
yeah,
I
that's
think
what.
people equate those two
Regis
together
Gonzalez.
when it's not the same, but.
Yeah.
Maybe we hold off on that discussion until we do the first meeting with the architects and go through as we define what it is. We can define the name too.
Maybe can we just say Civic Center in lower C and lowercase? Because right now it's in uppercase, like that's the name of it.
The Fair Oaks Ranch Gathering Place.
Well,
Yeah,
just
like you
call
just
it a
make
community
Civic Center with a
center
little c,
for now,
because
since
then
we're not
it's
naming
a
it.
thing, not a name. Yeah, I'm just,
Could we just call it community center since we're not naming it? Would that be easier?
Do y'all want to have the discussion now for the naming, or can we
No.
move on? Okay,
okay,
I'd prefer to move on.
so just leave it as is. Okay.
let's leave it as is, and then we'll come back at another time. I agree that what everybody's saying. I don't think the name is appropriate for what it is that we're looking at, but we'll find another time where we can have this discussion. Any other questions? All right. Then can I get a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the execution of amendment to the Chapter 377 project funding agreement between the Fair Oaks Ranch Municipal Development District and the City of Fair Oaks Ranch for development of a civic center and execution of all applicable documents by the city manager?
So moved.
After we do the motion.
Okay, hold on. Yes, sir. Chesley. I have a motion from Chesley
Second.
and a second from Emily. Any other discussion from council? Okay. And did you want to make comments, sir? Yes, sir. All right.
Couldn't let the opportunity pass me by real quick. On the removal of the Exhibit A, I'm a little confused about what all that does, but that sentence that I think Michelle or someone, where it did say in there, to the express purpose of creating this welcoming gathering space for public and private events. Again, the emphasis on public and private events. In any case, I think that in the documents that are approved or read here and approved tonight, that I still believe that the word city council should be included in these definitions of what that space may be used with. Public, private, it says city staff, but I would sure say put in a comma and say city council on record for that, because my recollections on all of our dealings with resolutions and budgets and hearings and all kinds of things is that a document like this, a resolution, becomes a historical document. And people later then, for justifications of actions, budgets, changes, whatever, refer back to the document and say, well, it said city council, we'll say, or it said whatever it said. So I really believe that ought to be included, since I think we probably are in agreement that a major portion of this is going to be the city council. Second thing is, I would suggest parking lot be included somewhere in that description of the facility and the design and everything. Right now, I believe it's silent on it. And whether the public lot would be for 10 cars, 50, 100, who knows? None of you were here, I don't believe, when we had the reserve issue up on Almond Road and all that hundreds of acres and all those things, where we ended up with a couple of hundred people coming to the council meetings, the TV cameras, the reporters, everybody else. And so, in any case, it created a real nightmare over there in City Hall with parking and people standing out and everything else. But the other thing is, the kitchen idea is that if it's a city hall and a public use facility, even if it's just a city hall facility, I believe a kitchen, a small, kitchenette, something is necessary, because that's going to be a separate building from the main city hall, and whatever is going to be held there, whether it's HOA meetings, whether it's council meetings, budget meetings, they want a cup of coffee, a sandwich, catering, who knows what. So I think the concept of a kitchen, some sort, not a crazy one, but it is valid. The last thing I was thinking, back onto the subject of potentially MDD sharing, I wonder if it's possible to get an official legal ruling on whether or not, at some point, not tonight, but whether MDD could legally provide any funding annually out of their MDD monies, which are incredibly huge now, to do that. It certainly would help the city, and it's all coming from tax dollars in various ways anyway. So anyway, thank you.
Any other comments from council?
Can I just make one comment? I did kind of, I agree, maybe we should have just, for Scott's purpose, when you're going back to wordsmith it a little bit, add in city, public, and private events. Just so it is clear that it'll be used for city stuff too.
Okay, any other discussion? Then with a motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you all very much. Great discussion. And we'll move on to our third consideration item tonight, was discussion and the possible action to shape and frame the third quarter town hall meeting. And I'm going to kick this one off. We've done two town hall meetings. One of the comments that we got feedback about it is we wanted to make the meeting less formal. So not to be held as a council meeting per se, but to have the ability, flexibility to provide information and make it straightforward to the residents based on the topics that we've selected. And to keep the overall briefings short, and then move on from there to get out to the breakout tables where we really get the information and provide information to our residents. Everybody on track with that? Okay. And so tonight, what we're looking at is we have our third quarter town hall meeting coming up, and we have some dates that were proposed to us still at the Spring Creek United Methodist Church, and these were the dates that are available. Those dates are on page 39. And then we have several topics that have come up. Some were the enduring topics that we haven't got to yet, and then we've added to the list. What I'd like to do first is go through and let's identify a topic, because I believe based on which topics we select, it may impact how quickly we can pull the information together, and then when we could actually schedule the next town hall meeting. Is everybody okay with that? All right. And the only comment I have on topic is when we were going through our strategic action plan, we talked about multimodal and forming a committee to provide a citizens committee to provide recommendations on multimodal. And is that something I think we looked at maybe a good topic to really get out there to what does multimodal mean for our city? And what are the areas that we're looking at that we'd like to see multimodal? And so would that be a good topic? May not be the primary topic, but it may be a topic that we could utilize to set up a breakout table so that we could gather information from our residents on what they'd like to see as part of multimodal. Everybody okay with that? And
Yes, I think we could also gather people who might be interested.
yes, we have a sign-up roster. Okay. And I think there's a lot of information there and exchange of information that we could gather between a breakout table. I'm not sure if we could give an overall view of it, but I'm not sure that there's a big topic there that we could do a presentation on. I think really we could set the scene very quickly, and then really it's one-on-one exchange of information to develop it. But given that, are there other areas that are on here that y'all would be interested in, or that residents would be interested in hearing about, that we could provide information on and may possibly get some feedback to assist us as we move forward with these projects?
What is the Dietz Elkhorn roadway reconstruction? Is it just the reconstruction of the roadway, or does that mean talking about how, and it's not in our city, I know, but how that whole area on that side of?
Well, and that's a good question. I believe, so we're moving forward with a design of Dietz Elkhorn between FM 3351 and Fair Oaks Parkway. And so there could be some information there, and I believe the Cape Dawson would be available to come and give a presentation on that, to provide information to the residents on it. I think that would be a great opportunity to get some feedback, because we're talking about a major project that will impact our city, and would really like to do this in some form of a town hall meeting to gather information from our residents so that we're in line with what people want as part of Dietz Elkhorn Road. So I'm in favor of including that. Yes, ma'am.
I think that matches well with the multimodal conversation. They worked hand in hand together, because I know that's kind of part of the reconstruction, is adding that ability in there. I thought that was part of what we had talked about originally. So I think the only part about the multimodal, and I don't know if I even want to use that word, it's very, I don't know, it's a word that I think people take to mean get away from driving cars and make everyone do something than cars. And I don't think that's our intention, but I could tell you, or other parts of the other communities, when they hear multimodal, they hear it in this aspect of the city's trying to get me off of my car and get me on a bike to go places, or some other way. And that's not the intention here. Obviously the intention is to still, cars are our primary method through the city, maybe golf carts, but but allow other modes.
Right.
So I don't know if we want to use a different term than that. That's just kind of a loaded term in my perspective. People have certain perspectives of that word before they walk in that we may not want them to have,
Okay. Besley.
I was just going to say, kind of on the multimodal topic, as a council member, the feedback that I want to get, and I also want us to give, is as we increase and add these things, we widen roads, it costs more money. So people can come in and tell us, yes, I want you to put this, 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 and this, but I think we need to make it clear in our exchange of information that the more we add, the more it's going to cost. Because I think, you ask people, would you like to ride bikes on a road? And the answer is yes, put a bike lane for me, that would be amazing. But if we then say, okay, well, that widens the road and means, this, that, and that, it's going to cost us much more money, then, so I think we just need to be careful with how we exchange information and let people realize the cost is going to increase with adding all of these things. So that would be my first comment. My second comment would just be with the multimodal, I like the idea, but also making sure that we're, I don't know if you want to call it setting a precedent, but talking about doing it throughout the entire community. And this is kind of our look going forward, if you will, if this is what council adopts, if that makes sense. It's not going to just be one area or another, et cetera.
Okay.
I think that could be part of the conversation, is which type of roads would you like to see that type of mobility? Collector roads, what roads don't you want to see it in?
I mean, for me, it's about safety. Like, at the bottom line for me, this is about safety. You drive out on some of the you drive out there too on your bike, Laura. It'd be nice to feel a little bit more protected and not feel like you're going to run off the ditch over there while you're riding your bike or your golf cart or whatever it is you ride. So for me, it's about safety. So I think we have to look at each road in their current state, and it may not be every single road that we need to add that to.
I completely agree. I'm just saying manage expectations
Right.
and give the information.
Yep.
Scott, as we look at this, we're looking at multimodal and primarily setting up a breakout table where residents can come and ask questions, and we have and provide information. Now, if you don't know the answer, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but how we look at it, and I guess Public Works would really take this and run with it. How would we present the information in a manner that meets the requirements of what's been expressed by council, so that we provide it in a means that, these are alternatives. These are things that we're looking at. I have to understand that there's an increase in expense for things that we want to go above and beyond at. If we want bike lanes throughout the city, then there's an expense associated with it. But
I guess what I'm hearing right now is I think what you said at the top is it will largely be an exchange of ideas and concepts. We have existing from previous town halls, I'm thinking the transportation town hall specifically, just a couple of models of what I think it was a collector street looks like with an expansion for an additional lane. We can show that and then just ask questions, just, you know, what does multimodal mean to you? What type of mean should we be considering? And maybe just as maybe as important, what doesn't it mean to you? But just provide what it looks like conceptually, understanding that, as mentioned earlier, each area of the city is a little unique. So we have constraints and expansion in different parts of the city, the budget implications. So we don't have anything, you know, obviously currently designed as a multimodal. So we can't provide a specific example of a street or an area that is really multimodal in its true form right now. But we can provide those sample model concepts and really just facilitate a discussion. That's and you know, take notes, provide that back as part of your recap. That's what I was thinking when I first heard this.
keep it basic, keep it
this
straightforward.
topic. Yes.
And maybe this is the first step in really looking at multimodal. We're gathering the information, and we could take this information, further develop it, and then bring it back at a later town hall to.
Quick point of,
Mhm.
quick question. When you have basic, like, examples of what it could look like on a, you know, a feeder road versus a this road versus a that road, but we're not necessarily selling that at this town hall as what we would want to do. That's what I want to make sure we're avoiding. We're just setting some examples and then trying to get some feedback on what the community is expecting. Okay, cool.
Right.
I think we want to be sure not to put any street names down
Yes, yes.
on our
'cause-
examples.
Yeah, because, I mean, you know what I
'cause-
mean. You throw that out there, and the next thing you know, you got next door neighbor going crazy that we're going to put bike lanes down, whatever, on Fair Oaks Parkway in addition to the golf
You
cart
may
lane.
recall from our transportation hall, we had one of the
Yeah.
poster boards had like an example of an arterial and a collector and a connector. I think we had as well. So
Yep.
it'd be similar to that.
Okay.
Just conceptual in nature.
Yeah, I think we need to be sure to put example on it, you know, these are examples. And then also say that it, you know, it can be considered on collectors, but it may not happen on all collectors or whatever. So just be very clear.
So I have a question. Our annual street maintenance, we have a budget amount for that.
Okay.
And people see that. And maybe that's something that we can use as just kind of a point of reference. That's because we don't have anything designed to give them an idea of how expensive these projects can be without having anything designed, right? Because they may not have any idea how.
I mean, we have the Post Oak Trail numbers.
Or Post Oak Trail, like the numbers that we do have, you know, maybe we can make those available at a breakout table if people want to ask about numbers. Also, would Pape Dawson would they have their own breakout table in addition to be able to present their, whatever they would present?
Reference to Dietz Elkhorn, yes.
Okay.
I think we presented all of our road construction projects and all their costs at the previous town hall. I thought, didn't we do that?
Yes,
Yeah.
as part of the transportation.
Maybe, and I think if we're going to be talking transportation, there may be people that are there that didn't get to see it at the first one, so just have it available. That would be a recommendation.
Well, depending on the date we select, that'll probably be too late. I was looking at, because we haven't even completed maintenance for this year, we could set up a table, just reference street maintenance program and what's remaining for the rest of the year and when it's gonna occur, and just an information booth for residents.
I think so. Yeah, we can provide the plan that has been approved and is ongoing. We have that already, and just provide an update, like you're
Yeah,
saying.
and then with that, I mean, whoever was there at the table, they could provide the information that Emily was talking about, if needed.
Wouldn't we have the Dietz Elkhorn example there already anyways? 'Cause that's going to be the other part of.
I think that becomes, yeah. All right, so what I'm gathered right now is we have a main topic, which would be the detailed corridor study. My belief on that is that Pape Dawson would come, they'd probably give a presentation up front, 5-10 minutes, and then from there we'd move out to the breakout tables. That'd be the primary. The second that we're looking at is the multimodal setup, which really becomes a basic information provided. What do we see as multimodal, but what we're gathering is basic information back from residents. What they would like to see is, what does multimodal mean? Bikes, golf carts, horses, et cetera, that we want to see throughout the city. Maybe some references of where they would like to see it at for each of the multimodal areas that we're looking at. Is that,
Map with pins?
well, we could do stickies.
Sounds good.
And then, so with those two, what we just discussed is a possible, just a table that provided an update on our current street maintenance program. And so I think it goes through August, September, but depending on the date we pick, there may not be any street maintenance program left. If there is, do we want to just set up a table to have it available so people know what streets are remaining or getting covered within the next month?
That's very doable.
Okay. All right, date-wise.
I'm looking at the Pape Dawson availability.
Yes.
That helps narrow it down if we want them to give a presentation. And I would maybe steer clear of September 5th, because that's right around Labor Day.
And then, to match what you said earlier, Mayor, so the anticipation is that we would not have a quorum of council members.
Correct.
So we won't have to check our schedules necessarily, as long.
Yes.
I sent my.
Although it's part of the motion, I don't think we have to identify who the 3 council members are tonight.
No, what I'm just saying is we don't have to have a consensus among council members that we can attend, because we're not
Sure.
intending to have everybody
Okay.
there.
I don't know, we're in the first week of July. I'd like to give our Public Works team and Pape Dawson some time. I think I was kind of looking at the 22nd or the 29th of August.
That'd be great.
Do any of those dates better for anybody else?
Work for me right now.
I don't have a calendar. Is the 22nd close to a
Tuesdays.
council meeting?
Those are both on a Tuesday.
There is not a scheduled council meeting on that date, either the 22nd or the 29th.
So we'd have it on the 3rd and the 17th that month.
Right.
Okay?
I could be available if selected. Or I don't have to.
I'm not available on the 22nd.
Okay.
I'll bow out and let y'all go. Back to school and all that kind of chaos, so.
Yeah, I don't need to be there. Been to one already.
Right now, I am available, but
22nd and 29th?
as of this week, I am available.
Okay.
If you know
Same
what I
here.
mean.
We have options.
Any preference from staff on 22nd or 29th?
How many council members do we want? 3.
3 or fewer.
Up to 3.
29.
I'd like to have 3.
But one includes you, right? Are you going to be there?
Well, I'm a council member, so I'd be
I mean, I'm just
one
saying,
of
is do you intend to be there? Okay, so then it's just really 2 other council members.
Any preference?
Yeah, not really. Without knowing everyone's individual schedule, but I guess just thinking about our public works staffing right now, the more time the better, I guess is what I would lean to. But that would be my only.
Let's go with the 29th. Okay.
And I guess we should let the Pape Dawson folks know as soon as possible, so they know to block that off.
Then could I get a motion to approve the next town hall meeting with topics to be primary with Dietz Elkhorn roadway reconstruction, and a secondary to cover multimodal connectivity throughout the city, and for the town hall to be held on August 29th.
So moved.
I second.
Emily and Laura, any other discussion from council? Any comments from anybody here tonight?
Following up on Chelsea's comment about costs and the increased costs, given the fact that this from I-10 down to the Parkway in large extent is probably driven by the Spring Creek and the HEB and all those facilities up there, I wonder about cost sharing or contribution possibly of those activities or that management company or whatever it may be to help us offset, we'll say, some of these costs which may be driven the increase of use of that area of Dietz Elkhorn and the safety standpoint is to possibly asking for, just like the state gets 10% from us to do things, is it possible, legitimate, that we can try to, and may affect drainage, who knows what, but certainly the adding safety to the thing and lanes for biking or whatever it may be. Anyway, just a thought for, see if there's a way to get contribution on this.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from council? And with the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. And we'll move on to our workshop item tonight, which is a look at the fiscal year 2023-2024 General Fund Department Budget Workshop. We'll cover administration, human resource and communications, finance, information technology, and then the non-department shared account. Now, Scott, you going to kick this off or straight to Julie?
Straight to me, I guess. That wouldn't work very well if it was turned off. Okay. Good evening, council. Julie Lovelace, interim accounting manager, and I am going to give you just a brief update of the budget that we covered a couple weeks ago. There have been a few changes that have happened, and then you'll get to hear from the department heads. Okay, first on the preliminary taxable values. We haven't gotten any updates from Kendall and Comal, but Bexar County is sending us weekly updates. The only thing that's really changed is that the taxable value total for Bexar County has gone down about $3 million. Just as they start settling protests, that number is going to fluctuate. We're still looking at about a 12.5% increase over the prior year. Okay, changes to the budget from the last meeting. One of the more significant changes is on the personnel side, specifically in the retirement line. TMRS just sent us our contribution rate for 2024. The city's side rate fluctuates from year to year depending on actuarial studies. This year it was 11.96, next year is 12.47%. So because that increased, the personnel costs have gone up, and that total is $17,915. There's a strategic project for digitization of city records that the city secretary is working on that has now moved operational to her budget, and that involves a software called DocuWare. That software is $8,000, so it'll be $4,000 on the general fund side, $4,000 on the enterprise side. We received a contract increase for ADT, which is a small amount, but still there. The next line, in your packets, it actually says reduce court technology budget. Scratch out technology, that was wrong, I apologize. It's court security. The court security budget has been decreased for the proposed budget next year because I think we're going to be using those funds this year. So instead of using them next year, we're gonna have them in this year's budget. We added some warranty costs for 2 small servers. The WatchGuard Cloud contract was negotiated a little bit and came in at a decrease. The HALT software system decreased. We talked about that at the last meeting. We also removed the cost of the NetFlow monitoring software from the IT budget because we want to discuss that a little further and put that up for council consideration. And then we also increased the budget for CPS Energy overall about 10%, which is about a $4,000 increase. So all told, the impact of all of those is about a $51,025 decrease in expenditures. So if you're looking at the numbers, on the revenue side, things didn't change at all. On the expenditure side, we're now at 9.3 million with an operating surplus of a little over $1 million. Add in the transfers, the capital outlay, and we're looking at a deficit of 52,695. Last time it was 103,720, so that's that difference in there. Balance side, things are a little different. Those court security funds, we're actually still spending those. Those are just coming out of the fund balance before you see that fiscal year 2023 ending. So you'll see how the court security line is now $6,000, when last time it was a lot larger. That's because now we've spent those funds. So we're actually decreasing the unallocated general fund surplus, that bottom line, that 877,028, that is going down by a little over $6,000. The court security funds and those other changes that I talked about in the budget. And that's it. Any questions?
So I have a question, because
Yeah.
being new here, I got a couple questions.
Okay.
TMRS is, what is that for?
That's the retirement.
Retirement. Okay.
Yes. It's close to a defined contribution.
Defined contribution.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the employee puts in 7% every year, no matter what. The city's portion fluctuates from year to year.
So the city's portion, is it matched? Do we match it dollar for dollar, or do we pay more?
When they after they become fully vested and they're pulling the funds out, it's a 2-for-1.
2-for-1?
Yes. But our contribution changes because the state is constantly looking at how many people are retiring, what are the benefits, and so they change the city's individual contributions every year. So it's never an exact match, like 14%. It's never at that level.
It's based on all the participants, right?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
You pay it in actuarial land, they call the actuarially required contribution. So based on expected lifespans, our total value of the city's participation over a 30-year time span, they calculate that into a percentage, which is what we pay every year. And this year it's around 11.3-ish,
Yeah.
somewhere in there.
It goes up and down.
So it's a defined, it sounds like a defined benefit plan. It's a defined contribution?
It is defined contribution because it's based on employee contribution.
Yeah.
So it's not strictly based on years of service like a defined benefit plan is.
Okay.
That's
Thank
it?
you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Julie.
Okay. I want to introduce Carol. She's going to come up and talk about the administration budget now.
Good evening, Council. My name is Carol, Assistant City Manager, Community Services, and as Julie stated, I'll be talking about the city administration budget, which encompasses 5 employees. Thank you, Amanda. Encompasses 5 employees, which is your city manager position, your 2 assistant city manager positions, and your 2 administrative clerks, which are the 2 clerks that sit up front, the face of the city when you enter City Hall. And as you can see from the chart on the right, 20% of the 100%, a small portion, is funded through the enterprise fund. So there are some expenditures that are split. The 5% increase in personnel cost is due to the annual salary proposals. Medicare goes up when the salaries go up, and the retirement, as Julie had mentioned. The supplies and maintenance and operations, you see a very, very little tiny line there. But if you look at the detail, it has gone up $2,600 this year from $2,000. The $600 increase is we are asking for, we budgeted some improved, more effective headsets for the two clerks up front, so they're not glued to their telephones. They can actually have an earpiece, go into the copy room, and still be able to answer the phone calls efficiently and effectively. I think, oh, there it is, the $700. That's our increase. And that's really all that I have. So I thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you,
Pretty
appreciate that.
straightforward.
Thank you. Okay.
That was easy.
All right, I think I'm next. So Joanna Merrill, Director of Human Resources and Communications, and I'm going to come to you tonight to discuss the proposed budget for these two particular departments. So we begin looking at our budget. As you can see on this slide, our current proposed budget is $489,454. Which is an increase up from last year, which last year it was $429,085. Our funds are split, as you can tell, quite a bit, half and half. 45% of that comes from the utility fund, and then the remaining 55% of that comes from the general fund. That's kind of in particular because a lot of the services that not only HR provides, but communication provides does go through both sides. So as we go to the next slide, changes to the actual budget, year over year, our supplies, maintenance, and operations, those kind of stay the same generally. We run pretty efficiently and pretty lean. Where you will see the biggest changes is personnel. Last year, council approved for us to add our multimedia communications officer, which is how we got Casey. And then professional services, we've enhanced different programs and things like that through these departments. That's where you'll see those. So specifically, as we go to the next slide, you will see the budget highlights in here. Some operational items that we did is we did include association dues for NPELRA, which is the national, and I should have written this down, but it's the Labor Relations Association. And the reason why we decided to go ahead and become a member of this association was so that HR could be prepared for any upcoming changes that might happen for civil service requirements or labor relations as we hit some of those population requirement changes through legal. I think Dan had mentioned that several council meetings back that some of those things might be coming. So to be proactive and ensure that we are educated and up to date with how those things work, we felt it was imperative to become a member of that association so we could have those resources and tools. Next, as you'll see, again, in the professional services, one of the reasons that that item changed this year was because the department-specific software moved from the IT budget over into the departmental budgets. So you'll see a large portion of that, right under $50,000 for that software. And one new piece of software or program that we decided to implement was Constant Contacts. So just for a little background information, we are intending to utilize this particular platform to help us distribute surveys and polls as part of the strategic action plan. So this will help us, give us some of the tools to be able to start looking at pushing those out to the community. And then lastly, we're looking at requests that have not yet been funded. So these are items that we are proposing and that we are asking council feedback and hopefully approval for these remaining items. On the communications side of my department, we are looking at adding monies for 2 physical mailers that would go out to the community in the mail. This is in an attempt to reach residents who may not be as tech savvy. So you guys are aware we have done a lot of pushes with our social media campaigns, with our mass notification systems and things like that. But we do have a lot of capital improvement projects that are coming up. And at minimum, one, we wanted to send a mailer out potentially to let people who are not technologically savvy know, hey, these are the technological stuff that we have, and here's how you sign up for them. And then a second mailer that potentially we could use for another resource throughout the city if we needed to do some kind of mass communication in a platform, again, that is not necessarily through a phone or text or email, something people can actually have in their hands. So
We elaborate on, you already have subjects in mind?
We do not.
No.
This is similar to what we do currently with the twice annually Oak Wilt mailers that we send out. So we're saying here is there have been requests in the past just generally from council or others to provide information on key events or initiatives outside of just social media and the website. We don't have a budget for that now. What this is saying is if that comes up, there is a cost to that, and going through the mail is not an insubstantial cost. So really the question for council is that a priority to the degree that we want to have a set aside for the potential of
Right.
of mailers should the need arise.
As I recall, we were talking about the possibility of doing, needing to do something in terms of education for wastewater costs and changes and.
Those will go in through the utility bills, which does have a cost, but not as
Not part of
as
this.
substantial
Okay.
as a individual mailing like this.
Okay.
So to answer your question, there is nothing specific in mind.
Okay.
We sometimes get that request.
yeah.
And this would be in addition to the ones that we already do get. Like, I got the Oak Wilt one
Yeah, the
in the
Oak
mail
Wilt's in
this
a
week.
separate budget. That one's already
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
But so this
Okay.
would be different.
It
from
wouldn't
that.
replace that.
No.
Correct.
It would be something new or something different if council had an initiative that you were like, hey, this is what we want to use it for. Even potentially, since this is the first year we've done like the quarterly town hall meetings, like potentially maybe we set all those dates in advance next year and we send a flyer, a postcard out for that. I mean, there's so many different ways you could use it, but it gives council the opportunity to direct us and tell us what you would like.
That was
And
my
then us
next
actually
question.
have the funds to be able to actually execute it for you.
That was my next question. So basically, you guys, you'll come back to council with, hey, I would like to message, okay, cool, thanks.
All right, and then the next item on here that we are proposing and requesting funds for is Moncito software. So as of right now, our current contract with Civic Plus is our website hosting, is where our website is hosted through. That's the company that we utilize. Every so many years, you go through a website redesign. We are currently doing that with them. So the basic outline and format of this website redesign will be generically compliant in a lot of the facial features, but this Moncito software, what it will allow us to do is not only to maintain, but to catch errors. So it's an optimization software for our current website. It will help ensure that, one, we stay ADA compliant in every way. So the initial redesign will be great, but then we'll be adding new components and new features and new pages. We want to make sure that we stay ADA compliant in regulation with all those rules consistently. So this software will monitor that for us. It'll provide us reports pinging any information that says, hey, here's an area where you have something that isn't ADA compliant. You need to update it, switch it, change it, whatever we need to do. And then we'll also provide weekly reports. I think it can even do it more frequently than that if we wanted to. But we have experienced issues in the past where a resident tried to access a document and the link was broken. Or there was an outdated document in one area and we needed to update it. So this software will actually monitor every single document on our website. It will monitor every single link that we have created on there. And it will provide us a report saying, hey, here's what we found. We found the error before a resident, unfortunately, has to notify us or a staff member has to notify us.
I sent an email about this today, and I hadn't read this yet, so that's so funny. I was like, oh, I just sent an email about this very subject. Do you know, will they help with, like, we do this for our website at my work, right? It's a little bit more expensive than that. So do they help with if potential websites, that's one of the services that the people that we hire for them, which may be why it's so expensive, help with lawsuits with when you, because they get snapshots of things and they actually have people in need of ADA, screen readers and all that stuff, actually physically doing it and also machine actually catching it. So is it a combination of both or just, do you know the answer?
So I don't know specifically, but that's definitely something I can ask. So I know that they have the software program that does it, but then they also have a full customer support team for us as well, that helps monitor and service our account specifically. So I don't know.
Because ours
if
will
it's-
help with legal battles and
if it's a
and
double lift.
research in conjunction with our lawyers will help with that kind of stuff. It might just be a question to ask. I don't know.
And I don't know that there's a legal component to this particular software. I think the idea behind this is that it'll keep us compliant and up to date with the current laws and regulations so that we don't get sued or
And when you
anything like
say
that.
compliant, to what level? There's different levels.
I don't have it with me, but it's the WCAG
AG 2.1?
Yes.
Okay.
2.1. That's the one that's currently active and everything. So that's where we would be up to date with. That's what they're monitoring for. And then again, it will provide us all of that extra services so that we can ensure that our website is running. If there's any slowdowns, it'll show us where those pages are slow and provide solutions for us to optimize it and different things. So there's a lot of components on the back end.
So it's doing more than ADA because that's
It is.
performance related.
Yes, it does more than ADA. Like I said, it also does the optimization and it will also prioritize too. So for example, as our residents and our community members are utilizing the website, it will analyze where most people are going for their information. And we can see that in the report, and maybe we can optimize our pages to reflect easier access to that particular item, or change our layouts or whatnot. It'll give us a lot of valuable information on how to make our current website more user-friendly, more accessible, optimize the pages, increase speed and reactivity and things like that. So it does a lot on the back end as well. And then, of course, I think one of the biggest things for us is, making sure we're finding those errors, those broken links before a resident has to go through the inconvenience of not being able to immediately access something they need.
And so it's Moncito that's doing all that monitoring and just spoon feeding you the information.
Yes, they
And then-
integrate with Civic Plus. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, that's fine.
Yeah, so Moncito will integrate with Civic Plus, and then it will provide us those reports, and we can set the frequency to which we want to receive those reports. They recommended that you run the report every Sunday night, and then Monday when you come into the office, you're ready to look at any potential items, and you can get those changed and updated and corrected as we go.
I mean, for $5,000 a year, if you're getting performance and AD, it's a bargain. I mean,
Yeah, we thought it was pretty great. We liked it. The demo was really informative and at least administratively on our end. The reports, the access, the ease of use, it was a big value add for us. And because we are such a small team, being able to have the comfort and knowledge that we're catching all of those items. And just to be honest, I don't have anyone on my team that has bandwidth to sit and monitor every single document and link throughout the page. So this to me is something that's going to help us from a productivity level as well.
nor you don't have the expertise to do the ADA part.
Right, exactly.
Are we required to have our city website ADA compliant, and which law states that?
That is a requirement. I mean, it's a legal law that it needs to be ADA compliant. And so one of the things that we tend to do, but it's with the website redesign, we're gonna get there. It's also about maintaining that.
Yeah.
So every time we upload a new document or a PDF or a different graphic, we need to make sure that what we've done or changed or added remains
Yeah,
in compliance.
I know what that means. I just want to know what law says we have to follow that.
Well, maybe Dan, do you know specific law? I don't know specific law,
I
but I
mean,
know there are a lot of ADA
Is
requirements.
this a known thing? Every city has to make sure ADA compliance. Is there some people that go out and audit us and make sure we're 100% ADA compliant?
So I would have to do follow-up research on that, but many of the grants that we receive as a city, I'm assuming we receive grant funding, require compliance. And so it's a question of whether or not this is one of those aspects would be something that's enforceable.
Okay, so there's no state law that requires it per se.
Right, not per se, not on the website. I would have to double check that.
Okay.
I don't know one off the top of my head.
I mean, it's good to do because we want to make sure everybody can see the website, but I don't want to spend $5,000 a year to make sure we're 100% compliant with something that.
It still won't catch everything.
Right. Okay, 95% compliant with something that we actually don't, we're already good enough. That's why I want to make sure.
We'll get verification for you.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, any other questions on that one? All right, and so the last one here is a request for a new FTE. This would be a communications manager for the department. That would change what we currently have for the two departments that we have. Currently, we have one full-time FTE, which council approved during the last budget, which is our multimedia communications officer. And then we have two half-time FTEs, which would be myself as part of that team, and then my HR communications specialist. She also commits half of her time to assisting with communication functions on the back end, because as amazing as Casey is, he can't always handle everything on his own all the time. So this particular position is one that we are requesting just because over the last couple of years, when I first came on was in 2019. The council at the time had approved a new, basically a new combined department for human resources and communications to help manage some of those features. Back then, we were barely just putting out news flashes for council meetings, public notices, and we only had one social media platform that we monitored. And since then, obviously, we have grown quite a bit with new items and new services that we're providing. And I do believe, I foresee that we're going to continue to grow in that area. Communications for cities is very key. It's very vital to share that information, to educate the community and things like that. And with the proposed strategic action plan items that we presented to you and one of the previous workshops, I believe very strongly that we are going to need a communications manager who can effectively manage all of these projects, that will have the bandwidth to ensure that they are done on time and within budget, and they will provide the specialized skills and expertise, not only to complete those projects, but then to also help us provide new ideas and new projects and new ways of reaching out to our community that will just enhance the department and the services that we already provide.
So with that position, how many people would be allocated to just pure communications?
So it would be two full-time positions.
And right-
At that point, I think this is probably a discussion that we would have internally, but the way I would like to see it structured is I would take my split personnel and I would make it a full-time HR position. And that way, we would have the two full-time communications people, and we would be back up on this other end as part of the department. But the majority of those functions would help to ensure that the HR side of those projects continue to happen.
So if you don't go fully back to HR, you would have 2.5 communications
Right.
people and 1.5 HR?
Right.
Okay.
So you'd be taking that half person, putting focus on HR,
Right.
and then just allocating this person.
Yes, and even though we're in both departments, we're under both GLs, obviously it wouldn't be full. We do have a lot of big events and things that kind of takes a all hands on deck look, but the majority of the essential functions of those jobs would be directed in the day-to-day kind of HR functions on that side, which, to be honest, she's already doing. But it would enhance the communication side so that we had more bandwidth on that end as well.
So based off of that, it sounds like really you're asking to make your HR team full and then move that responsibility to a new person. So really you're saying there's more HR responsibilities and they can't be taking their time doing communications. So we're going to hire a communications person so your HR people can do HR stuff. Because that's what I'm hearing, because I don't hear that we're getting anything new communication-wise. We're just
Cutting in
freeing up the
half.
people who are doing it now to do HR stuff, and we'll just get someone else in to continue what was already being done.
I think that's part of it, definitely.
Okay.
I think if you're looking at it from a holistic side, there are definitely several HR projects that we haven't had the bandwidth to complete because we are, rapidly changing and going in some of these communications areas. And so it would free up time from what I'm doing to focus on some of those HR policies that we need to really focus on and still have somebody managing all of the communication projects, those things that that need to be done day to day, the project management, the timeline, the things like that. But again, I think I've mentioned this before, my background is not in communications, so it would enhance the skills and the expertise that we need for that specialty department to just really take our services to that next level.
So are there other areas of avenues of communication that we would be adding to our communication program by putting this person in?
I would think so. I think adding this full-time communications manager would open up that opportunity, not only for us to implement the strategic action plan projects, which there's a lot in the next couple of years, a lot of really in-depth, time-consuming projects that would need to be done, but it opens up the possibility for enhanced services as council directs us, as we get community feedback and things like that, and again, I kind of go back to the projects that we already have, the CIP projects, the master transportation plans, things like that. So much of that in the upcoming, as we update and go through, will need enhanced education and communication and some of those tools.
I have one more comment. If Laura's, go ahead, Laura.
I wanted to kind of finish my thoughts. So I'm just trying to really understand what you're saying here. So are they managing communication creation? Because they're not managing projects, because the projects are not in communications. They're like, okay, we're doing wastewater here, we're doing this here, but we need somebody to put out communications to support other city efforts.
I think they are managing projects to the extent that, all the various events that we've been doing last year,
That type of stuff.
whether it's been the current examples are State of the City, to some extent the Town Hall, the 4th of July celebration. We've had some special events with ribbon cuttings, things like that are projects that are managed by communications in the traditional sense. That I think you hit on the point earlier that one of the primary cruxes, if that's a word, of this was, yes, to really first and foremost to allow our HR people to do HR work. That's absolutely that's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to that, so it would be a dedicated event management, more direct management over the daily communications. There's also expansion to some of those other avenues we talked about, community engagement, other town halls, surveys, things of that nature, and also some of the written outreach. We haven't gotten to it, newsletters. Getting something in there, but those other initiatives in the plan, like Joanna mentioned, that we haven't gotten to yet, it would allow a dedicated resource to do that.
Just one last question. Manager, is it a people manager or more just of a manager of work? Like, for instance, is Casey going under this manager?
I would envision that, yes.
Okay, thank you. That was my last question.
There's a lot of information on this benchmark city thing that you gave us.
Yes.
So, couple questions that I have on that. You're showing, I guess, each person, but what I don't see is how many people they have specifically for communication. So if we look at, normally we have Chavano, so I'm kind of surprised they're not on here, but regardless, Alamo Heights doesn't have anybody specifically for this. Does this mean they only have one person in Bernie that's the digital, or how big is their department?
So I don't actually have that information from the benchmark salary survey data that I have. It's definitely something I could get for you. But for example, I believe Bernie has 2. They have their director, and then they have one other dedicated position. But something unique to Bernie is their departments also manage internal communications for their departments. So they have a communications liaison that has functions within their departments that, hey, they are responsible for posting to their Parks and Recs social media platforms and creating content for that. We don't do that. We, as the communications department, manage all of those postings for every department. And so we don't have liaisons within each department that do that currently.
So I guess in coming to me, the way I would see it, if I was adding or requesting of council to add an FTE, I would have come with all of those details, if that makes sense.
I do know you have that question from last time citywide on
Yeah,
city
and
positions. We haven't done that yet, but we
yeah,
haven't forgotten
so
that.
adding, I mean, we just added the one communications thing. I mean, Laura and I were big on that in the last. That was kind of, you know, I would say spearheaded that because communication is important. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I believe we were looking kind of for a PR thing, which is a little bit different than I think where we're at. But if I was at all, and this is just my personal opinion, so if I was at all to entertain adding another communications FTE, I would want to see HR and communications completely split to where it's different departments. But I'm definitely not on board adding another communication specialist at this time.
Oh, go ahead.
You hadn't talked yet, I don't think, have you?
Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, sorry, I was just trying to make sure everybody had their turn. So this person, in their current roles as communications people, they also plan events, is that what I heard you say?
The
Yes.
current staff has been doing that, yes.
We are in charge of making sure all the events
So
get
the
planned and created.
Town halls, the fireworks, and so and you're really truly, if you move over, you're really only asking for a half of a full-time equivalent.
Essentially, yes.
So would it not be a better title for this person, like manager of community engagement, because they're doing communications and event planning, so they're going to be dipping in many buckets. I'm just thinking out loud because the way you're presenting it to me right now, I'm not sure I'm biting yet either. And I would like to see more like, this is what this person's going to be doing. I know you've thrown out some examples as we've been asking you, but to Chesley's point, it would be nice to see, like, before I can fully engage in this, because it's not just communications if she's going to be doing all this other stuff, or he. So I'd like to see just a little bit more details on what that involves. Because I know you guys got your hands in every pocket. I get that. But I need to see more proof as to what that's going to be like for this person.
So as part of the budget request project, we have developed a draft job description for it that can outline some of those. So I mean, we definitely can show you what our vision is, like what the actual essential functions of the role would be.
It's in the
draft is in
packet.
the packet.
Oh,
Oh,
okay,
it is?
yes.
Page 106, I think.
Thank you.
So I don't know
Forward.
if that is what you're looking for. If it's not, then I could definitely, work on getting some clarification for you if that job description doesn't answer the questions that you were hoping for.
Oh, yeah. I missed that page altogether. Sorry.
I guess the thought I had to add on to Michelle is really what is our communication plan, our outreach plan? Like, so what we have today, we have several platforms, right? We've got some of the social media, we've got, our own internal website. But what are the things that are lacking that this person would pick up, not just offload to give HR more time to do what HR needs to do, but if we're just going to bring this person in to just maintain what we have with some modest increases in communication, I'm not sure that makes enough sense right now. So I'd like to kind of know, what is the vision for, what portals are we not addressing yet? What areas would we think that we'd want to push out there that this person would take responsibility? Because you're doing it today as is today. So where would we be going with adding this person rather than just shifting some time around? So that's more like, what is the plan for what they would be doing rather than just a job description?
I think, and I hope, most of that is part of our strategic communications plan that we discussed briefly at our strategic planning session a couple weeks ago, but probably prior to your arrival, Councilmember Roden, we had some more detailed discussions about the strategic communications plan specifically. You know, a lot of those enhancements were, well, we talked about broadly, there's some more detail in the plan itself, but it mainly has to do with the community outreach, the more detailed surveys, customer service, and yeah, the events.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Newsletters,
That-
yeah.
I think if we got kind of a recap or a summary of that for the council, I think that would help us with understanding that.
Anybody else? The comments that came out to me that as I'd gone through this, so for you and Jennifer to have and focus primarily solely on HR, is that?
To be able to address those projects right now that are very critical to the HR function.
Yeah,
not
but
only
we're going
internally.
to take the COMO requirements away from you, and so that you and Jennifer can focus specifically on HR requirements.
So those combinations will still be there. They'll still be there underlying. We'll still be the backup. You know, I'll still be the director over the department, so everything will still final. I can't take those out of mine. But I would focus the shift from a 50-50 split, at least in Jennifer's role, to where she's able to focus more and more along on the day-to-day. And I can address some of those bigger HR projects that currently we've kind of been pushing aside because my bandwidth has been more needed on the communication side as oversight and director and management of those areas. So, yes, definitely to your answer, but I don't want to make it sound like we would completely be losing those functions. We would still be there to supplement, but the majority of those items we would like to fully take over, have the communications manager take over, the planning, the creation, the reviewing, the editing, all those things that take up so much bandwidth of what I currently help and assist with now, and allow me to perform more at the policy and procedure level and bring those kinds of services, not only
Okay.
for the communications, but for the HR side that has been unsustainable at this point.
I think it's safe to say largely, if not completed.
Yeah.
If not completely, removing that function from our dedicated HR position, from personnel in said positions.
And
But
some
that-
of it I could look at, and, you know, we talked about that we've been working on a strategic communications plan. And really, it would focus our efforts that, you know, as Keith was talking about, what guides us. And so we've kind of worked on that. And so in relation to executing that, it's identifying the personnel requirements that we need to make that happen. And some of that, I think, is, maybe I haven't fully understood it, is coming out tonight, and, you know, why we need another FTE in communications. Also, some of this I've looked at is we've gone through this, you know, you were by yourself, and you were HR and communications. Then we hired Jennifer, and still HR and communications. And now we got Casey, who's really come in and provided a lot of the groundwork for communications. Understand that there's a lot going on in both of those areas. And it's to me, it's looking at what do we need to do for HR, because some of this is really providing you the capabilities you need to do in HR. And then really, as we're talking about communications, what are the requirements that we need so that we can meet what it is we want from our strategic communications plan? Is that?
Yeah, that's fair. Accurate.
Yeah, and I think kind of following up on, I think, a comment that Chesley made and kind of a little bit what you were commenting on is, I remember when the communications HR kind of just fell together. It just happened to work out that way because Kim was doing that before you came on board. I personally don't think that that is the long-term vision that I think where communication should be. Now, if we're moving to a communications manager and a multimedia, that should be under admin. That should be under where we have our city manager and our assistant city managers because they support all departments. And so if we were to even consider this, I would consider it as long as the communications team moves out of HR and moves under an administrative area, because to me, that just makes the most sense. Because it's just sitting there because of historical precedent and just how we happened to do it before. But logically, to me, that doesn't make any sense. So.
Anybody else? Okay,
Great, thank you so much.
thanks, Joanna.
I am Summer Fleming, the Interim Director of Finance. And I'll wait till the slides are up. All right, the proposed budget for the Finance Department totals $721,447. Thank you. 83% is for personnel costs. The department has 5 positions, currently 1 vacancy. 16% of the budget is for professional services such as appraisal district fees, annual audit fees, and trainings, and less than 1% is for supplies. 45% of department costs are allocated to the utility. Changes to the budget year over year. Total personnel costs are increasing only 1.4%, which is lower than the combined COLA and merit due to department turnover. Professional services are increasing 28%. That's largely due to department-specific software that is now moving back into the finance department from IT. Additionally, we've added $5,200 in new software for ClearGov strategic planning module. We've also programmed annual increases in the appraisal district fees, annual audit fees, and moved costs for the GFOA conference from the administration department back to the finance department. And there are no change to the supplies budget. Any questions? Yes.
Is your budget where we keep, like, if we were going to do an more internal audits and things?
Yes, that would be in our professional services budget.
So are we asking for that or no?
No. All right.
Additional audits, is that really what the question was? Because we have the annual audit.
Yeah, the
that-
annual financial statement audit is in there. In internal audit, we're still working on our internal audit procedures. Yeah, before we
Yeah, we
could.
did talk about our strategic planning to complete the, I guess, put the capstone on the internal controls report by providing a external third-party audit one time. That is not in the base budget currently, but that could be a decision package, and if so, it would go into the finance department.
Right. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks, Summer.
Okay. Well, since I'm up here, I'm going to go over the shared department proposed budget. You'll just have to skip to page 100 in the agenda packet. That proposed budget totals $1.1 million. 78% of the budget is for transfers to the Strategic Projects Fund and the Capital Replacement Fund. 22% is for shared services such as liability insurance and electricity costs, and less than 1% is for supplies. Only 6% of that budget is charged to the utility, and that's specifically for liability insurance and postage costs. Year-over-year changes to the budget. As mentioned in the June 15th budget workshop, the prior year COLA was budgeted in the shared department, and this year the proposed COLA is budgeted in the respective departments. Shared services is increasing 7%. This includes a 15% increase to the liability insurance, 10% increase in electricity, and that's offset with the removal of the portable building rental. And transfers are down 76% due to the transfer to the Strategic Projects Fund. As you know, this year we funded construction of multiple drainage and roadway projects, and the proposed budget currently is only funding projects in process. No new projects have been funded pending the outcome of our CIP workshop on July 20th. That's it for this department.
Thank you, Summer. Any questions? All right, and now IT.
Good
How are you,
evening,
Brian?
Council. Brian Lejeune, IT Manager. For the IT department, we have a total budget of $617,918. That's currently broken up, 40% utility fund and 60% general fund. That's how that's funded. So, as stated before by previous people, we've broken out the software that's specific for each department. So it's no longer under IT. It's now been broken out to better reflect which department it falls under. And also anything that's organization-wide will still fall under the IT department. So with that, we've got the changes right now. Personnel, we've got the COLA updates that's projected. The professional services, that's things that are organization-wide. Cloud services and such that support the entire organization. Shared services, things like copiers and cell phones and whatnot. We don't have any changes in supplies and maintenance. Capital outlay, a very minor update. And then overall, we have a decrease due to the change in funds between departments. For the highlights on the department, as I stated earlier, we've got the shifting in the funds and the increase in the overall organization-wide services, such as Microsoft Cloud services. We do have some capital outlay built in there for small service for PD, and again, our annual workstation refresh. For some things being requested, not yet funded, NetFlow network monitoring software. So that's for monitoring our bandwidth within our network. So if we were to have an issue with, say, streaming, for example, audio or video, we'd be able to look at the network and be able to tell, you know, oh, it was a part of the network or it wasn't a part of the network. Currently today, we don't have that kind of overview.
What do we do now?
We have to look at individual devices live. And then we have built in there for a consulting firm to assist with an IT master plan to help pave the road for the future. And I'll take any questions if anybody has any questions at this time.
No questions?
I'm just kind of, can you just elaborate on the IT master plan?
Sure.
$50,000 for somebody, for a consultant to come in and look at our plan, or?
So what they would do is they'd come in, they'd speak with each individual department, interview them, find out their needs, what they have planned for the future, and lay that out in an organization recommended plan based on their expertise and feedback.
We talked about that in our strategic plan
Yeah.
meeting as well. And the idea is, we talked about before, Brian and Jason have been catching up for the last number of years on software service there that have been outdated. We've been sort of piecemealing, adding software components to our operations throughout the city without really a solid plan for what we need for the future. It's been, like I said, a largely ad hoc approach. So this is I mean, it's a placeholder budget amount right now, but this is bringing in some expertise to determine what any redundancies we may have that could be consolidated, anything we need to plan for the future, and just really getting a future scope of services that, honestly, we don't have right now.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Anything else we need to add on the budget workshop for today?
Not from a staff perspective, unless you have further questions.
Okay. Any overall questions on what we covered?
I just have I guess a process question.
Okay.
'Cause I think we've been through a couple of these now. I thought they've been great. The ones that were the unfunded requests, I've seen quite a few from multiple departments. Are those going to be consolidated at some point and we
They
talk
are.
about them together, or?
So, yeah, and thank you. I was remiss to provide a recap or if you, so you've heard from these admin departments tonight, Public Works and PD last time. At our July 20th meeting, we'll be going over municipal court. Both staff and Judge Keller will be there for that one. The city secretary, who was not able to be here tonight. And then we'll talk about the capital improvements program and utilities. So that will be a longer budget session, but that will be the crux of the next meeting in 2 weeks on July 20th. After that, we'll take all of those items, funded and unfunded, to our August 3rd meeting, where we will review first the proposed compensation plan with any position changes, current or new, and the ECI with the COLA, which will be out by then. We'll do that on August 3rd, and also at that meeting, we will recap all of the items, where we are right now, all of the funded and unfunded items, both from an operational and capital perspective, and drill down to get close to some final answers. August 17th will be the final proposed budget. That's the meeting at which we set the maximum tax rate as well. And we'll still have at least two regular scheduled meetings in September if we want to make further revisions after that.
So just, I think maybe some of the confusion last year was, should we come prepared for that August 3rd meeting with things that, changes and proposals we want to make, or like, these are the things we want funded, these are the things we don't want funded, like, should we assume
Absolutely.
August 3rd is the day we should be making those?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So we'll have the consolidated list for you of what's above the line, what's below the line, as I say right now. But at that meeting is where we'll want to. That'll be our markup session, if you will, to where we want to make changes to what's funded and what's not.
So really what we've done in these presentations with Public Works, PD, and then what we've gone through today is providing us the information that we will need. So once it's consolidated, we'll have the background to understand what goes above the line and what goes below.
So hopefully, and of course, you're still free to ask questions tonight or any other time, but the intent has been to get through the operational section at these first few meetings and then focus on the one-times, the capital and equipment and new requests at the end for the final net budget.
No, I appreciate that, because I think if we have a date in mind where we should get our mind ready to mark things up, it helps me.
Yeah, I would say August 3rd is the biggie.
Come prepared.
I'm prepared.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Scott, just, I'm kind of a detail guy. Unfortunately, you got that on the council. So looking through the detail that was provided in the packet, I mean, I didn't see the utility fund version of that. So I was a little trying to equate these charts, back to that. And I had studied all these, gone through in pretty detail.
Mm-hmm.
Will you be providing the separate or both those together so we can see that full picture?
At the next meeting, you will have both. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
That would be helpful.
We've been preparing that in context of the rate proposals that the council is discussing over the last couple meetings, specific with this one to the wastewater changes. But yes, you will have both at the next meeting and henceforth for the rest of the budget process.
So when I look at an IT budget or a different department budget, they have some from the general fund and from the enterprise fund, I'll be able to see the combined view of that. Not combined, but I'll see two packets.
You will see administrative charges essentially in
Send me a link.
the utility fund.
Thank you.
Anything else? Everybody good? All right. We'll move on now to requests and announcements. I guess from the council, any announcements that y'all would like to make?
Can I say something?
Of course.
And you're probably going to say this, I hope I don't take your thunder, but staff did a wonderful job on the fireworks thing. It was the most amazing. I mean, it was just incredible. The lasers were perfect with the flags flowing. Like, it gave me chills. It was really nice. Y'all did such a good job. It was incredible, crowded, people everywhere. It was amazing.
Can I piggyback on that?
Of course.
Even in the back 40, we sat and watched most of it from our front yard. Absolutely amazing program. But I think the side thing to think about this is that we put on such a good event that I don't know what the PD calls were, but we were not bothered by the normal people blowing up stuff in the backyard that we've seen. I don't know if you all saw a drop in that, but I think that spending the extra money and putting on a really nice event just kind of fulfilled the community's needs for fireworks. My wife and I both commented, because we're usually home worried about the large animals in the backyard, and it just didn't happen. I think it was a great thing.
Go ahead.
Ditto to everything. I thought it was amazing being there in person. But there's one thing I didn't think about until afterwards was I know we had put in that request that we have less of those very loud, boomy fireworks that really cause disruption to dogs and stuff. And I didn't really think about it until afterwards. I didn't even notice they weren't there. But it was afterwards I thought about it, and I said it really wasn't as loud as it could have been, but it was still amazing.
Yep.
And I think that's what kind of helped with the reduction of the complaints about dogs and stuff, because they didn't have those gigantic booms ones.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, great job, guys.
it was awesome.
All right. Any other announcements?
Samesies.
So I did have I wanted to talk about the 4th of July. I'll let the items go that we talked about, but this was a city event. It was co-sponsored with the city and the country club. And Brad Belson, the country club manager, did a phenomenal job of putting it on. Well, one, allowing us to have the event on his grounds. And they did a great job of supporting it. And, you know, along with all the work that we got from our city staff in supporting it, and what a great event that we had from our COMO team, our police department, our public works. Did I leave anybody out? I don't want to strand anybody, but I think that covers the major people that were involved and were out there. And I know that our public works teams were out there 2 days prior, hauling equipment and getting things set up. So it took a lot to bring this together, and from the city staff perspective and the country club's perspective, great efforts in bringing it together, that we had a really nice event that everybody is saying. The other thing that kind of stood out to me, and somewhat what Scott was saying, is the number of people that attended. I'm not good at estimating numbers, but the numbers that I was given, somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 individuals. So it was a very nice turnout. And honestly, from just my preference, the laser show, turned out really good. So a couple other announcements. We do have brush and bolt pickup. It's going to start here pretty quick. For Sector 1, we'll start on the 31st of July. That's a Monday. For Sector 2 on 7 August, and Sector 3 on 14 August. So it is coming up quick. If you have any questions on that, please call up here to City Hall, and we can provide any additional information that you're looking at related to it. And then at last, we're still looking for volunteers to serve on our boards, committees, and commissions related to city staff operation, well, city council and city staff operations. If you're interested in applying and volunteering to serve the city, please contact our city secretary. The information is available on our website where you can get the application, but if you have questions, call our city secretary's office and they can provide that to you. Additionally, we need all applications filled out and returned to our city secretary office no later than the 9th of August. And Scott, that's all I had.
Yeah, I just echo everything on the July 4th event. It was, you know, better than we could have even hoped, and we had some pretty high expectations. And and myself personally, when I get voicemails from residents that that take their time just to call in and express positive feedback. That doesn't happen every day, so that's a great feeling for us all, and thank you to those who have reached out just to say thank you. That's a really is a great feeling, and I do want to, and we mentioned the great teamwork already, but I do want to call out, particularly our maintenance team, led by Jimmy Washer, who was out there at 11 o'clock the night before fixing equipment, switching a lot of stuff that most people didn't see, but fixing things on the fly to make sure that thing happened. Nonstop all day. Also, Mark Costa, Cliff McClendon, Keith Ott, all did a tremendous job, and I said had to work on the fly, and it was amazing. And I was watching them. I couldn't do much, but I was watching them and letting us work him. But it was amazing just to see them come together for some unexpected things. But the end result was fantastic. Traffic control was I think flawless getting out of there. So great job from the PD as well. And again, we talked about it was. HR's budget, they were there both days supporting the maintenance team, making calls, and so they were there during the night and day as well. So I just wanted to reiterate, great work by all, and it turned out absolutely phenomenal. So thank you.
Is there any council member that has a topic that they would like brought up for any of future council meetings? All right. No executive session tonight?
Correct.
Unless Dan, are you? All right. Amanda, anything else that we need to cover as part of the meeting tonight? We're good? Scott, anything from your end that we need?
No, sir.
All right. I have the time now is 8:51 and we are adjourned.